We have introduced them earlier, but to reintroduce, I would like to welcome and thank these award-winning yearbook advisors. Making her way up on the stage is Heather Nagel. Heather, thanks. And Heather is with Christ Presbyterian Academy and also our JEA State Director. In the middle is Nola Henderson from Jefferson County High School, and Stephanie Crichton from Hardin Valley Academy is on your right. I've just asked them to be fairly informal, to talk about how their books have been set up. What do they do it in a class, after school, what the staff is like, best practices, staff organization, staff management. So there's really no formal presentation here. We'll just ask them to maybe take turns in talking some of those setups and best practices. But we thought that maybe some of the best part of this session would be your questions and their answers. So feel free to have questions that you already have, but also maybe you have some generated questions throughout the session. Feel free to ask those at any time or at the end. So I'm just going to let them take it away. Thank you, you three, and we'll see you throughout the day.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'll start. I'm Heather Nagel, as he said, from CPA. I've been doing this 13 years now, which is crazy for me to say that, and I love it. It's amazing, and I'm fortunate enough to have it 2 class periods of yearbook, and I have about 20, this year actually, about 22 kids per class. Do we want to start there and then?
Sure.
Okay, that's good.
I'm Nola Henderson, and I'm at Jefferson County. I also have 2 periods of yearbook. Total combined this year, I think I have 46 between the 2 classes, and I've been doing this for 9 years.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Crichton from Hardin Valley Academy. I have 1 staff with 14 students, and then this year I have added an intro to journalism class, and they are going to do some of our easy pages, our portrait pages, and our senior ads. And I have 35 in that class, so that's hopefully going to be a feeder program to add to it. And this is my 15th book.
Nice. That's good. My class is set up so that you can take it all 4 years. You can start your freshman year through your senior year. And we set it up where there are positions, and it's something you can work your way up toward. So initially, when you come onto my staff, you're a writer or a photographer. And then I have my editors-in-chief teach them how to write, right? So it's very student-led in my class. And then the next year they can apply to be an editor. And so you can be an editor of all the different sections in the book, like sports, fine arts, academics, etc. Or you could go the route of just being a photographer or just being a designer. So we have very specific positions in my class, and every year I have an editor-in-chief of each classroom, since I have 2 classes, and they run the show, basically.
My setup is pretty similar to that. We actually have 2 campuses at Jefferson County. We have a Patriot Academy, which is just 9th grade. It is down the road. It is completely separate. So for us, having freshmen is not really an option. So our kids are pretty much primarily juniors and seniors. We do have some sophomores on staff every year. And of course, when they come in, they learn the whole process. Photos, writing. It is a lot of led by our seniors and our editors and things like that. And of course, as they progress through, they of course have the option to become section editors, editors-in-chief, and so on.
I'm pretty similar as well. I do not have just designated reporters or photographers, since I'm a smaller operation. Everybody does a little bit of everything, and if you're weak in one area, you've got to rely on somebody else. I also have students who've been on staff 3 and 4 years. We offer an endorsement program at Hardin Valley, so if you're interested in the journalism program, you can get a journalism endorsement if you take the class X number of times, which is an incentive to get students to stay in my class, which is ideal because the more years you're on staff, the better you are.
And I think one of the greatest things you can do for your staff is bring them here to conferences like this so they can get ideas, because you can tell them the same thing over and over, but I feel like when you go and get other ideas from other people, or if someone else says it in a different way, it just is so much more inspiring.
I agree. agree. And that's one of the reasons why, like you said, you have the seniors teach them things, because I can stand up there all day, every day, and say it over and over, and it doesn't, I don't think it is as effective as if hearing it from your peers or for someone who's done it. And usually they can throw in funny stories like the time when I did this and it didn't work. This is why this is not a great idea to do. And that really helps out a lot.
My photography staff as well, I have a head photographer for that, and I have different photographers working underneath them, as well as designing. I have a head designer and different designers working underneath them. So you could even do different systems within the category. I meant to throw that out earlier. So, do we want to take questions? Sure. Or, yeah, any questions from you guys? Did everyone hear the question? She was asking what advice do we have to get the staff motivated, to put that spark in them, right? Do you guys want to?
Going to convention, to a national convention in Indianapolis in November, is a great opportunity to see what other staffs are doing. I find that students are competitive, and if you can find a book near you that's better than yours and show your staff, look what they're doing across town. I think that that's motivating when people see they're no better than us. Why is their book better than ours? That's a motivator. You lead by example, so when they see you getting after it, hopefully that's going to make them get after it too.
I agree. I think coming to something like this, sending in your book for critiques and saying, oh, this is what we could do better, this is how we can improve. And you're right, we're close to Morristown, and so our kids are always like, did you see the Morristown book? Did you see this county's book or this place's? And they do, and it's a competitive thing for them. And we're also really big at Jefferson with positive motivation in my room. We like to do, as I'm, yes, getting attacked. We have this thing, it's become a tradition, we have cupcake deadlines. And I'm not exactly sure I'm going to make 46 cupcakes this year. That's going to be a little overwhelming. But I make cupcakes every single deadline, and they go nuts. And it's just kind of like it becomes, instead of this total stress-filled, oh my gosh, I have to have it all done by today, it becomes kind of a more fun thing. And it's anything that you do that you can make more fun, even if it's hard work, it's, everybody is more involved and they're more excited and they want to be a part of it, and it becomes a thing. So anything you can do to kind of make the tough stuff a little more fun, I think really helps.
Absolutely, I agree with that, in that you have to create this environment, this community where people have fun, they want to be a part of the family, but then they don't want to let their family down. You know, so definitely. It's like, oh, if I don't meet my deadline, if I, if I don't get excited about that, you know, it's going to affect my friends, it's going to affect my family in here. And so you have to create that environment, and that could take, over a course of 2 or 3 years, depending, to create that. It's not something you can create right away, but it's something you definitely want to foster and keep going. As far as going to, you mentioned Indianapolis, the National Scholastic Press Association / Journalism Education Association. They host 2 different conferences as well throughout the year. So you have the THESPA one, and then you have those 2, and they're in different places every year. And this year there's one in Indianapolis, for example. And if anyone's interested in going, I have a 55-passenger bus that I've rented, and would be happy for other schools to join us to do that, by the way. So just see me afterwards if you're interested in that. But going to conferences like that gets them so excited, gets them pumped up, and they see that journalism is a thing. They see all these other kids there, everybody else so excited about it, and it's like, whoa, there's like thousands of kids here. And that has done so much. That has done wonders. Coming to these conferences has done wonders for my staff, just being here. My kids were so excited today to come and just see everybody else, from all across Tennessee. Like, everyone else cares too, and that's amazing. And so doing stuff like that, as well as doing competitions, submitting for competitions, being members of different organizations like Tennessee High School Press Association and JEA as well, you can submit to their different competitions, and when kids win, stuff from that, that's something where they are instantly invested and they buy into that. And they should, because it's an amazing thing what they do, what you guys do. Journalism, I think, is the best thing you can do in high school. I know I'm biased, but it really does teach you those life lessons, and it's all about getting them excited about their achievements in it. So we do that. Let's see, what else? I think really it's just the community is the best way to inspire them and to brag on their work, make it a big deal what they do. We have brag day every deadline. We talk about the best articles that were written, the best layouts that were designed, the best photos that were taken, and we make it a big deal because it is a big deal. And whenever my students win awards, I have them announce it over the intercom in the mornings at school. I want everyone to know about it. We put it in the school newsletter. We even do staff T-shirts, which I saw some group with some of them that said SNAP or something. Those were awesome, by the way. Yeah, that's basically.
I agree.
Oh, you have one more? Okay. So her question was, how do you make a solid theme that is incorporated throughout the whole yearbook, right?
Well, I think there are two parts of it. First, there's the visual part. What's it going to look like? And sometimes a theme will look great, but it doesn't really resonate with your year. So you have to think, too, about, does it really work with this year in this school? And I think it's hard. Sometimes one sounds great initially, but then once you really write it down, okay, but what does that look like in this word section? What does that look like here? You just really have to think big picture. And I think it's easy when people present a theme idea, it becomes it's me versus you, which theme is going to win? And it shouldn't be about that. It's just about we as a team have to agree which theme is best for this school this year, and it's not about, yours won and mine lost, but which one would most accurately affect the year, but basically, or reflect the year. As long as you've got a solid theme and you've got a cool graphic element and a limited color palette and a limited choice of fonts, it's going to be a good look.
I agree. We usually, I think we've talked about this, we tend to pick our themes for the following year in the spring, just because the very first year I waited, because I'd never done yearbook, I didn't know, and we waited until the fall, and it was trying to get that many people, 20-something people, to agree and all come together. It was a very much, well, if this is my theme, and if you don't like my theme, then it was a personal thing. So we actually, my seniors, my returning seniors, my editors, will sit down in the spring and usually come up with one. That doesn't mean that we haven't come back through the summer, or I message them on my mind and say, I don't like this anymore. This is not working. And usually one or two of them pop up and say, me either. I just didn't want to say anything to you. And we've chucked it and started again from scratch. But I think it's not just enough. You can look at anybody's sample book up there and say, oh, that's really cool, that's really neat. It is, but it has to work for your school, for your year. And sometimes that can get hard if nothing's changed at your school in eons. There's not really anything going on. When I first started at Jefferson, it was the same thing. It was always the same. And we kind of got lucky. The past 2 or 3 years, we did a building program for 3 years. After the third year, we were really sick of that concept, but it was something changing. It was something different, something new. And we, of course, could really work and build with that. We did a rebuild book. We did, last year when we finally finished and it was all completed, we did a new perspective because the entire front of our school had changed. It was a totally new way that we went into school and to look at it, and so that really worked for us. And of course this year, it's just back to us, and so sometimes it's hard to come up with an idea.
Yeah, and I agree on something that you touched on there, that some kids they're afraid to say something about it, or sometimes, others will get offended and, oh, but I like this, and someone else shoots it down. And so I always tell my kids before we start talking about theme, don't get offended, really, this is going to change from where you start. It pretty much always changes to where you end up, at least for us. And so a lot of the years I'll try to show them, look where we started and look where we are now. Very different, but we needed to go through that journey, that process. And so coming up with a theme is a process. It is a journey, and it's something you guys need to flesh out and talk through together and be willing to change. Like in some years I'll get students that latch onto an idea and it hinders us as opposed to helping us, And we always do it in the spring as well. I highly recommend that, just so that you have a jump on the year, so that throughout the summer, if you see like a cool design or you see a cool concept, you can take a picture of it and share it with the class, just to be thinking about it and let that idea just kind of settle, for a while and work with it. I think one of the strongest themes you can choose is one that knows your school well, that can speak to your school. But one that you can carry throughout the book. It needs to be one that you can carry throughout the book verbally and visually is the most important things when it comes to a theme. And so the catchphrase, isn't necessarily the most important thing. Sometimes my students are like, oh, that sounds so cliche. And it might, but how can you make that come to life throughout the book? What visual representation do you have that expresses that word or group of words that you have as your theme? Like last year we did the theme as forward. Same direction, different angles. And so we played off angles. We had triangles, and that was our visual representation. So you need to figure out what visual representation can you carry throughout the book. And then also you need to have some kind of packaging in the book that plays off the words from your theme, whether it's you don't want to miss this could be your theme, and then the way you carry it out throughout the book is we didn't miss this, or did you catch this, or look at this, playing off it in some way. That makes a stronger theme, and that gets everyone excited about it too, because they can add to the piece of it. It doesn't all have to be the repetition of the theme over and over. You can rephrase it, but you need to think about what verbal and what visual can make your theme so strong.
What was your follow-up?
We do. Yeah. So her question was, how do you bring all the ideas together, unify that to make one good yearbook? Because you feel like you have so many different ideas. Go ahead.
We have voted when there were two. There wasn't really one that was stronger than another. Last year it came down to a vote, and the losers, they lost. We do try to, I guess the consolation prize, we tried to take like the concept that group had for the divider pages and try to work it in, and so everybody felt like they were, because it is everybody's book, and you don't need half your staff grumpy all year because their theme lost. So we did try to incorporate their ideas into the greater theme, but ultimately, you've got to go with what you think is the best. If it's a bad theme in August, it'll be a horrible theme by February. If you're in, if it's not going to get any better. So you just got to make sure you choose the best. But we have voted.
With doing the spring thing, it's usually a group of editors. So there's maybe 5, 10 of us, and we sit down and we figure it out. And I've found that sometimes if we come in and we pitch it to everybody in August, and we've already figured out what our fonts are, what our colors are, what our word spin-offs are going to be, and we have all of that for them as a package deal, a lot of times the reactions are a lot better than if we just come in and say, what about, rebuild, or what about a new perspective? And they're like, no. And if we come in with the whole package and present it to it and show them the vision of it, I've very rarely had kids. You may have some that are kind of like, yeah, that's great, okay. And they're fine with it, but very rarely do you have anybody that's like, that stinks, I hate this. Yeah, and I think that helps to kind of give them the whole viewpoint.
Absolutely. When we plan ours in the spring, we go to the JEA and SPA conference, wherever that is. And I bring about 8 editors, my top editors, my chiefs, my head photographer, my head designers. And I lock them in a room, in a hotel room, buy them pizza, and say, you can't leave till you come up with a theme. And they do. And I have them, these usually like 8 or at the most 10 people, sit together and just throw out ideas and talk about things. And it's hard to tell what the school year is going to hold because you don't know it yet because you're not there yet. And so it's hard to pick one. So you have to pick a theme that you think just speaks to your school. And so they throw ideas off each other, and it's several hours just back and forth, and then we hold up some visuals that we find ideas like on Pinterest or different magazines. Well, what about this? We could play off this, cool angle here, this triangle. Like, in fact, we came up with our last theme because they saw this really cool design with all these different angles, and they wanted to play off that. And so I have them come up with one, and we leave there with our theme, with kind of an opening copy, like what our mission is, and a basic layout of what things are going to look like, at least the major theme pages are going to look like. And like she said, we come back to the staff and we present it to the staff as a whole package. And generally when you do that, because you can see that you've thought everything out, generally when you do that, most people are like, oh, okay, I see that, I get it, yeah. And I've built up the expectation in my class that those top editors are the ones that really drive the theme. And so I rarely have others that, are like, oh, I wasn't a part of that. Instead, they're like, wow, what a cool idea you guys have. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way we normally set it up. Great question. Her question was, how do you refresh pages that happen every year? How do you keep it interesting? Because prom happens every year. Right? SGA does the same things every year, or high school football plays a game every year.
In academics, one thing you can not do it by subject. Do it instead of the math spread and the science spread, which are do a field trip spread, or where do you study? Study hangouts, you can shake that up. But like for a spread that's the same every year, the very first thing I have my students do is look back at the past 3 spreads of homecoming or prom or whatever and see what have we done previously to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves visually, that we're featuring different players, different people who are involved. And then you've got to be creative. You've got to look behind the scenes. Who put homecoming on? Who's the unsung hero here? And try to visually think about what's different. Maybe it's the behind the scenes person. Look for a new angle and be especially careful of looking, not telling the same people's story. We have 2,000 students, and so we have to be really careful that we spread the love out and that we're not showcasing the same person on the team every year and that sort of thing. So my first suggestion really would be look at the past 3 books so that those seniors are getting something new. And then look at other schools' spreads too and see, how does this school do prom? If you can have 10 or 20 other schools' books in your classroom, that's such a good resource. I mean, some will challenge you and you'll be like, oh, and then some will make you feel good. You'll be like, this is a horrible book, and you'll feel better about yourself. But you can always get something out of someone else's book, an idea for how they cover something, just a fresh take.
I agree. We mix up our coverage. Some years, just because of the way the theme played out, it made sense to do the English, the math, the science. One year we did, this was so hard, but it looked so good when we got done. We did the academics by the 5 senses. And so one was a page on taste, and one was a page on sight and smell, and so on and so forth. And you have to cover everything. You can't just say, oh, well, we're going to leave out science because, No, you had to get all of them in that. This year we're going to do our clubs. We've done them by groups for a few years. We're going to do them by months. And so in other words, when they do certain activities. And so that way you get all the clubs, you get them all in there. But I think we all know there's some clubs that do a ton of stuff, and then some you get to the same layout and you're like, they did one thing, and it's so hard. And so this way it will be representative of what they actually do, and the ones that do a lot will be in there more, and the ones that don't maybe do as many things, they're still there, but they're not as, and you don't end up with some of the same staged photo. Oh, yes, I'm doing community service, and because you're trying to come up with some photo. And so I think mixing up your coverage, definitely looking at other books. Pinterest, I'm a huge fan of Pinterest. It's always great ideas. There's cool layouts, cool thoughts, everything on there as well. So
I feel like Pinterest takes my life away sometimes. I just can't stop looking at it.
Yes.
Well, I have 2 thoughts on it. The first one is, when I first started advising 13 years ago, the students, what they did was they looked at last year's yearbook and they saw how they wrote it, and they basically wrote the exact same thing and just filled in different names. I was like, oh, no. And so that led me to figure out the very first thing I tell my students is, if the copy that you write for this book could be in any other year, it's not good enough. It needs to be unique to this year. You need to be telling this year's story. If it could be in any other yearbook, any other year, you're not telling the story of the year. It's not unique. It's not good enough. And so it all begins with the interview and the copy that you write. And some people don't even do the big, long articles anymore. Sometimes you can do smaller coverage, which is fine. But still, everything that you write in there needs to be so unique to this year. You need to get really interesting quotes and coverage, like, don't just get, it was fun, I really enjoyed being in the play. Well, why? Oh, I got bronchitis and everybody came and met me with, chicken noodle soup, or I don't know, something random that happened from that year, because every year those stories happen. Even if you have a student come back and say, really, they did nothing this year. No, they did, because it's all part of school and the human condition, and we're always doing something different every year. There's something there. Somebody felt something. Somebody experienced something. And I keep having them dig, and I think that's the way that you make it unique to the year is your interview, your coverage. But as well, and you touched on it, and how you cover things, like how you organize the book, that can really help you spice it up for the year. So for example, you might just do the typical sections. Okay, here's the sports section, here's the academic section, and here's, classes, et cetera, whatever. And that works, and my school's doing that this year, for example. But some years you should mix up how you cover that, depending on your theme. Maybe you do chronological, maybe you do it by month, maybe you do it by season. And that will allow for some interesting coverage, like if you're only doing the English page, for example, in the fall. Okay, well, what are they doing in the fall that's unique? And you can really focus on that story. One of the neatest things out there right now is umbrella coverage, in that your section, you don't have your typical sections anymore, or you don't even do it by seasons, you do it by concepts instead. And so maybe you have concepts like challenges, victories, inspirations, loves. I don't know, you come up with some basic concepts, and then you fit different subjects into that concept. So under challenges, maybe it's, like high school English page, because maybe you're going to talk about the AP classes, and maybe it's the football game as well, and maybe it is the volleyball team who ended up losing right before state or something. And so you find different things. They can be like academics, they can be clubs, they can be sports, but they're all covered on the same page, and they might all have a little different amount of coverage on them, but it's a concept instead of just, here's the football page, here's that, high school English page, here's this page. Instead, develop a concept instead. So that's one way to spice it up that I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her question was, how do you get underclassmen involved in the yearbook, like inside the book itself or on the staff? Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I give all of my students about 125 names each. I divide up the student body, and you get a role, and those are your people, and they're your problem all year.
That's cool.
So at the end of the spring semester, your final exam grade is how many of those people are in the book besides their portrait. And that forces my staff to get everyone in the book, because I have found if I don't do that, then it just, even with 2,000 people in the school, it's easy for it to be the same people over and over, the upperclassmen and the people that, even in a big school, the people that play sports are also in student government, and they also won homecoming, and they're, and they're in AP English. They're everywhere. I can't get rid of them. And so I love those people, but we've got to get everybody else in the book. And so that is the only way I have found to be really able to get everybody in the book more than once, is to tie it to my staff's grade.
We have a giant, we actually have a storage room off of our classroom, and there's a giant master list of everybody's name, and we highlight first time, highlight again, second time with a different color so it starts changing. And once they hit a certain point, pretty much they're dead to us. And occasionally you'll still have it to where you end up with somebody who's in there one time, and sometimes you will have people who don't want to be in there, and that's hard. And you will have people who play and start in 3 sports and are valedictorian and lead in the senior play, and you can't leave the lead out or the valedictorian out. You have to do that. But I mean, we really do try to, and I'm with Stephanie, we have about 2,200, and it's hard. It really is hard, but we make a very concerted effort, and that's part of their grade as well, because otherwise it's very easy, I think, to say, oh yeah, I tried to include a lot of people. I marked all my names. I did this. No, if it's part of your grade, then it matters. Yeah.
Yeah, my school is K through 12, and we have to cover kindergartners as well as seniors. And so that creates a little bit of a challenge too, because you're in high school creating this book. You know nothing about the kindergarten. Maybe it's been years since you've covered them, although they have the cutest pictures, by the way. Love it. Anyways, but how do you cover elementary and how do you cover middle school? I love your idea of you give names to everybody. We do something similar to what you do. We have a big list. We call it the hit list, and we keep tallies beside everybody's name. And after they've been used X amount of times, they're out. You can't use them anymore. And so one of the things you do run into are those kids who do everything constantly, right? The kids that's, the star of the play, the star of the football team, involved in every, club imaginable. So you've got to cover them. And so what I do is on the pages that involve everybody, like classes and academics, and if they're using the star from the play on one of those pages, I'm like, what are you doing? No, this person's already going to be covered tons. Let's use people that aren't normally in the book, people that can be overlooked sometimes. Let's find their story. Their stories are so interesting. And so you just want to make sure on the pages that include everybody that you have people that aren't going to be included on the other narrow topics such as a play or a team or something like that.
Yeah.
Yellow shirt. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have a follow-up on that and one more question. On your assigning certain names and tying it to grade, how do you do that? How do you divide that up? Is that
I give them the list before Labor Day, so they have all year with their people. And we do a survey of the entire student body early on where the students, the first part of it is they circle everything they're involved in. So and then we ask them the questions that we're going to include in the portrait page. So my staff, they can color code their own copy and they know, okay, this guy plays basketball, I don't have to worry about him. So they see early on, okay, I really have about 40 people that are my challenge here. And it's their responsibility to get them in the book. And I give them grace for about 10 names because over the course of the year, somebody's going to move or be suspended or whatever, or just flat out refuse to be a part of the book. So I give them, 10 names as grace so that they don't have to get them all. And then they just keep their list, and we do keep a list highlighted too so they can see where they are. And it's a team project. I mean, those names are yours, but you've got to work together to get the people in the book. And so it causes teamwork. Oh, hey, you're doing the math spread. This guy's in geometry right now. I'll go interview him for you if you can use his quote on the page. So they still have to work together, and they have to be very forward thinking because our portrait pages are the first spreads we publish, and those are the easiest ones to get those people on. So you really have to think with the portrait pages, this is their best moment. Who have I got to get on these spreads?
Yeah.
And then my other question is, I've been the advisor at 2 schools. At the first school, Yearbook was a really cool thing. Everybody wanted to be included in that. At this school, it's not as cool to be on the Yearbook staff. So how do you attract the cool ones?
I would say once you get a few, they recruit for you. If you can identify, 2 or 3 or 4 kids that you personally know, they're go-getters or they're talented writers or photographers, and if you could sell it to them, like, hey, I'm really trying to build if you could get 2 or 3, then they follow. And maybe you have to maybe you have to recruit them in pairs, or hey, I really need both of you, because I find it's hard to get one kid, but if they are sitting down with another and they're like, oh, she really wants both of us and we could work together. Yeah. But it's a process. I mean, it takes a while. When Hardin Valley opened, I was able to publish volume 1, which was a cool experience. I transferred, and I just got who I got. There was no application process this year. They just threw kids in a room, and it just takes time to you get one talented kid, and then it kind of builds, but it takes a while.
This was actually set in place before I took over Yearbook from a lady who had it for 20 years, and it was kind of but I keep her process. I get recommendations. If you're not recommended, you don't come on my staff. I give them badges. We have a huge campus. They go out. I can't watch all of them all the time, and I have English teachers just because they have to write, and so I need to know that they're going to be able to put a sentence together and, just basic English skills. And I also ask the English teachers about, trustworthiness and reliability, and do they complete their assignments on time? Are they always here? So basically just a general work ethic of those kids. And if you're not recommended, I don't take them. I need to know going in that these are kids that I can rely on and kids that I can trust. And for me, it's almost become a thing. I've gotten a lot of kids that are the cool kids, and of course then their friends are like, oh, Yearbook's cool and it's fun. Or they walk in one day and literally for the 2 minutes that they walk in my room, the kids are joking and laughing, and so they automatically assume, oh, that's a cool class, you don't do anything. No. The book, that's what we do. So that's been a problem for me more than anything, are kids that want to just come in and just be like, oh, it's cool. I'm gonna take a couple of pictures and I'm done. And so I rely on that recommendation process.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I recruit, essentially, and I get recommendations, and I give them letters, the year before saying, hey, you've been recommended to be on the yearbook staff, and talk about all the benefits it can give you. And that, for me, has been able to get a lot of amazing kids on staff, and it's really attracted some great kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one more. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. The way I blend it, so I have two different staffs, and we have a big message board a dry erase board where they can write messages back to one another. We have boxes where they can leave messages. But what works for me is having positions and having set positions. You're the sports editor. You're in charge of that page. This person is your writer. And the writer usually is in the class with them. Sometimes they can be in the other class and they just leave messages, and we have a very structured system in that way. But I have particular positions, like you do this. It's not like a group of people work on that page, that one editor decides the content and the pictures, for example, and has a writer that writes the article. And so that's one way I found that really works. You give everybody a particular responsibility.
I'm similar to her. In fact, I went on her blog over the summer, and your message board, we stole it completely. We use it, and my
Please
kids
do.
love it. But yeah, we have a place up there. We did the little magnets.
Yep.
They've got their actual pictures on there, and they move them around based on, there's a general spot, place to leave messages from, and they put, picture to picture, and they leave each other notes.
They love it.
We have cubbies to leave messages, but yeah, we very much, it's you are in charge of this, and this is your particular responsibilities. So, yeah. I think we
Great.
probably need to
Thank you
wrap it.
guys so much.
Yes, thank you all
Let's
so
show
much.
them our appreciation.